Anybody know the story?
I guess it's up to you to tell it.
He was able to like fight a lion, like he was as strong as a lion. That yeah, he defeated it, and then God gave him powers and stuff. And then that he fell in love with the lady, and then the lady like had bad intentions, and then she cut off his hair for like the power, and yeah, he lost it all.
Yeah, so it was said that Samson had great power because of his hair, he had long hair. So she, and he won't tell anybody the secret. He won't reveal himself to anybody. And so finally he does reveal himself to Delilah, was her name. And while he's sleeping, she cuts his hair. And then, so the idea is that now I'm taking all of your power. Because it turns out she was a spy. She was an enemy spy. And so he believes now, so now he is imprisoned. Anybody know how he's tortured? Yeah, they cut out his eyes. They cut out Samson's eyes. So that means something, yes? Why would you cut out someone's eyes? What's that?
So they can't see.
So they can't see? True. What don't you want them to see? Yeah. In fact, better yet, what is it that cutting out his eyes actually does for him? What's that? No, you're right. I heard you, but speak up. You're right.
His strength came back.
Yeah. So what does that tell us about the eyes? What do they do? I mean, they do a lot, obviously. But think about it in that context of that story. What do the eyes do?
Help him fight.
What's that?
They help him fight.
I'm sorry.
Do they help him fight?
No, they don't help him fight. In fact, they get in the way of his abilities. Yeah. So think about this. If you guys were all blind, how much of what I'm saying to you would you be hearing?
Just your
You hear my words, yeah. You hear some intonations. You might hear some clapping around. But with your eyes, how much are you hearing? Sorry, what? Everything. Like what? One more time. Follow?
Your eyes are a distraction.
Yeah, my eyes are distracting me because I can see lots of other things. That doesn't allow me to focus on the task at hand. Your eyes give you the option to. You could look up here and you can see all kinds of hand gestures and things like that can pull you into the conversation. But we misuse our eyes a lot of times. You know, like for example, if you're in love with somebody, your eyes are wonderful to look at them. But your eyes are also an ability to look at somebody else and be distracted by it. How it is that we use these things. Samson's eyes got in the way. They contributed to his pride. By having those eyes torn away from him, what was he forced to do? He was forced to turn to God and be like, God, well, now what? You know, and God said, okay, now that you think that you're weak, now that you realize that you've been brought low, now you can be used. Because now these things, you know, the things that are going to distract you from your actual mission at hand are taken away from you. It would have been easier to have just been like that all along. Said, yes, I have these eyes, but let me use them for the proper purposes. Instead, sometimes we have to have those things stripped away from us. As much as they hurt, as much as we think that we need them, we have to be brought low and have all of those things stripped away so that we can find out where their real power lies. You know? Yeah.
Like I also think that like temptation took over because like her looks and stuff.
Yeah, and that's what it was. It was her look. She was beautiful. You know? But I mean, you've heard this story before, yes? Well, why not? We'll go back to it. So we go back to the story of Adam and Eve. That's the whole thing, isn't it? So Adam and Eve, if you know the story, it's said that they were the first two humans, that Adam was created. Then Adam's kind of walking around. He needs a helpmate, so then God makes him a woman. So you have Adam and Eve. And then the serpent who shows up. And of course, the serpent represents what? The devil. We find out now, here's the interesting thing. Where does it say it's the devil? It only says it in one place that I'm aware of. Anyway. And it's not until the New Testament. And Jesus refers to it as the devil. He says it was that serpent of old. You know, the serpent of old was Satan. But in the Old Testament, we never see that it's Satan. It's never quite said that it's Satan. We just kind of understand that it could be, you know? So the serpent is known for doing what? What do serpents do? They fight. How does the serpent fight you?
Wrapping around you?
By wrapping around you. How can it do that? Don't you see it coming from a mile away?
Yeah, it's quick.
It's quick. It's sneaky. It gets you when you're not looking. So the serpent shows up and finds her by herself and is like, hey, what's going on? Hey, is it true that you can eat of any of these trees? That's what I heard. First things first, bring it up. You get her to look at it. Because when you look at something, now all of a sudden it can become interesting and tempting to you. And we might convince ourselves, no, not me. But let's say that you have a significant other, and then someone sits next to you in your math class, and then they start talking to you. It's okay, right? It's just talking. It's not going to go anywhere because you have a boyfriend or girlfriend. So you're just talking, And then maybe somebody they hit you up on social media, and you become friends with them. But why? Because they need help with homework. So then the homework, they message you and go, hey, did you do the homework? Oh, yeah. Why? It's just homework. Do you have to tell your significant other? No, it's just homework. It's just another person. Is it really, though? Is it really? Maybe the homework question comes in like at 6 o'clock or 7 o'clock, but then homework questions start coming in like at midnight and all that. Oh, thanks for the help. So what are you doing? I'm just looking. It's nothing. It's no big deal. But that's the whole thing of it, isn't it? That Eve sees the fruit. And she sees what? It's pleasing to the eye. So because it's pleasing to the eye, you stare at those kinds of things. I'm just looking. There's no harm in looking. But what kind of desires do you, where do your desires come from? Well, they come from the things that catch your eye. Or they come from those abysses into which you gaze. If you stare into the abyss, the abyss stares back into you. If you stare at something attractive long enough, you desire it, you want it. And you might pull yourself away from it, like, oh no, but I don't. But that's the thing that you created because you allowed your attention to focus on it. Think about the things in life that we focus our attentions on. And so much of it comes from these desires, the things that we see. And then we see something, then we want it. And so he then confuses her. He asks her, so you can eat of any tree, right? So first off, he just lies, because he knows that that's not what God said. You can eat of any tree, right? And she says, no. And she takes a stand. No. We can eat of any tree except for that one. Yeah? Did God really say that, though? Now he sows doubt in her mind. Is it really that bad? Well, yes, he did. Then the serpent says to her, let me tell you why. Because he knows on the day that you eat of that fruit, you'll become a god like him, and you will know good from evil. Actually, God has that later on. So he knows on the day that you eat of that fruit, you will become a god like him. You will elevate yourself to his level. He's trying to trick you. And isn't that the way that a lot of the stuff kind of goes about? Did someone really say that? They didn't say that, did they? Okay, they're lying to you. We sow doubt. So she falls for it. But this is a pattern that we all follow. Like I said, we dismiss these stories that are apparel. They're ancient stories of us grappling with an understanding about the world and an understanding about ourselves inside. The universe that's inside of us, we're trying to grapple with that to understand it. These are deep things, man. And is there anybody in here who can deny that? That the things that catch your eye, that you stare at, that you allow your mind to dwell on, all of a sudden become the desires? We actually know for a fact that this is true, scientifically. That when you're around something a lot, you develop an affection for it. If you're around a person a lot, you develop an affection for them. Nothing is everything. It isn't like, no matter what. But we do know this, that familiarity brings that. Familiarity breeds, what's the word I'm thinking of? Of course, the first time I recorded, I forget the word. Well, anyway, but familiarity breeds this kind of compassion, or feelings for things or people. And so, the things that you stare at are going to be the things that consume you. What are you staring at? Doesn't even have to be with your eyes, by the way. With Samson, it was. But what are the things that you're allowing your mind to dwell on? Are those the things that are good for you? Are they? So maybe we should focus our attentions on the things that are good for us. Narcissism is one thing. If you stare at yourself in the mirror, then you're going to be focusing on what? Your appearance. Now, granted, that's it. It's easy for an ugly person to say you shouldn't stare at yourself in the mirror. Believe me, it's easy for an ugly person to say that. But then again, it's also easy for a smart person to say, you shouldn't focus on appearances. You should focus on the mind, on the intellect. Well, of course a smart person would say that. But the question isn't whether or not it's a smart person or an attractive person or a nice person or whatever. The real question is it true? Is it correct? Is it accurate? I don't know. You do. You know what's best for you. You know the things that you should be focusing your attentions on. You don't need anyone to come along and tell you. But that's probably why it pisses us off so much when someone does come along and tell us. Because they're telling us information that we already know, information that's convicting to us. That's why it makes us feel bad for not doing it. You know? And it's information that ultimately we already know we should be following. You know? But we realize that there's some level of deficiency that we're not. You know? And so that handles the first couple of lines. The first couple of words. And we talked a little bit here about the undermining our courage, because then we fight for someone else's convictions rather than our own. I think I was mentioning before, it's a good exercise at some point to ask yourself, how many of your own ideas, how many of your own thoughts are actually uniquely yours? How much are things that we've just kind of pulled in from other sources, or things that we've read or believed? You know? And by the way, just because you believe something that somebody told you doesn't mean that it's wrong. You know, we'll have this thing where we tell people, oh man, you just believe what people tell you. So? I mean, aren't almost all beliefs based off of things that people have told us in one way or another? Either we've heard someone talking about it, or we've been taught it in school, or we inherited beliefs from our parents, or whatever. The question isn't whether or not your ideas came from there. The question is whether or not you've tested the ideas. Have you challenged the ideas? Have you tested them? And if you've tested them and challenged them, and you found them to be strong and worthwhile and valid, well then yeah, you follow them. And just because you got it from someplace doesn't, someplace that wasn't you, doesn't mean that you shouldn't be following it. You know? But just make sure that the convictions are your own, that they're not somebody else's. In other words, the ideas maybe came from someplace else, but test them yourself. I'm going to stop, because otherwise we'll be here till Tuesday. Questions, comments, concerns, complaints, criticisms, critiques?